Wintery. No, wintry. It betrays its wintry master. That's it! Let's see that fool of a Nord top this. Only the greatest poem ever conceived. Well, half conceived. But 3 more years and it shall be finished. I can't wait to see the look on that stupid Nord's face when my very words rise from the page and become the sun. I don't know his name and I don't care to. I imagine to utter it would be some sort of Daedric malediction opening a portal to oblivion. You'll know him by his looks. He's as ugly as a Shulk, as graceful as a golem, and as fat as a sea drake. And much like those drakes of Blackmarsh, his entire existence is an utter abomination. Well, typically, something of this stature requires decades to perfect. Even for someone of my talents, it has taken months to get this far. Yet I have made significant progress nonetheless. Perhaps you would like me to bless you with a verse? You're well-mannered, Sirrah. The honor is mine to read to one so noble, but I assure you the pleasure will be all yours. This poem is based on a vacant home I passed by in Whiterun, following a mounted duel with a Nord. The cave is the heart where the dragon tongue sings, and the torchbug pens poetry upon a naked leaf. Here lie 7 generations of smells, where beds never cool, and windows never shut their eyes. Where on a middas of sun's dusk the sky betrays its wintry master, where the sun dances with the nightshade, and spells cast calm on the day. Yes, and life is not about how many breaths you take, but how often you listen to my poetry. Not many realize this truth, but you, Sirrah, have an ear for the sublime. It's an honor to meet a lady of such exquisite taste. Easy. You can find him by his smell. When it comes time to deliver my poem, I'll follow that specific trail, to my nose's regret. The smell he emits is unlike any other. It's as if all the world's mildew collected in a single boot and was left to ferment in a dragon's anus. I dare say he must be a werewolf of some kind, the way he drags his hairy knuckles on the dirt. Your insight is to be commended. I did indeed do as you suggested, as I'd suspected that only Hircine could manifest such a soiled existence. Unfortunately, while the Silver Hand provided me with valuable leads, they wouldn't agree to allowing me to duel the fiend myself. The unruly fools only wanted to sate their bloodlust, and as far as I'm concerned were as disgraceful as the werewolves they hunted. It's a shame that there are only a few of us in all of Nirn capable of appreciating my work. Such is the tragedy of genius. As I have no heir, I plan on donating everything I own to the college. Many years, more than I care to count. My clan made its fortunes long ago, and now we spend our time leisurely, donating to the arts. Most of the time we make sizable donations through gold, but I believe that my poetry will serve as an equally charitable measure. Yes, undoubtedly you wish to know my authorial intent. While there are countless deeper meanings, the basis of the poem is about how caves are a home for the undead whose winter never comes. A hereditary affliction. I have my father's eyes. It is a mark of noble ancestry. How should I know? He's the one who started this quarrel, but I aim to finish it, and I just about have. Just 3 more lines. Oh, I've tried many times, and each instance he's used treachery and deceit to fashion a narrow escape. As a gentleman, I have fought him according to the rules of fair play, and never once thought to sink to his level. Simple. Words travel with you. They stick to the inside of your mind. My verse will worm its way into his mind like a poison, gnawing away at the tips until it burrows a hole to the heart of madness. It is not death I speak of, but the death of his dream. I will make him weep until the widows pity his soul, and then I will kill him. Of course. In fact, I was waiting for you to ask. Which duel shall I relate to you? The 2 I recall most vividly was the bare-knuckle brawl and the duel of spiced wine. Sure. My servant and I were attending a party at the Thalmor embassy when someone mentioned a delightful bard that reminded her of Razalon. Of course, I recognized the fungal odor of dead animal musk immediately. As there are no weapons in the embassy, I was forced to challenge the fat golem to a bare-knuckle brawl. I would have won easily, but the scoundrel managed to sneak a shiv past the guard. His every jab was a slash. Still, I would have trounced the cur had he not cut my forehead, which blinded my vision. It ended in another draw. That day the Nord was here in solitude. The fat boar asked me, "What is it this time? Dice? Daggers?" But I told him my weapon of choice was wine. It was a drinking duel. We spread 21 bottles on a table and took 10 each at random. The remaining bottle was a cure disease potion. Yes, after 5 bottles, if we were both standing, we would take a break. We both were allowed to eat, provided the food came from the inn. The brute went for a haunch. I made no such request. I walked behind the counter and plucked my choice from the rack. Garlic. Earlier, my servant had asked the local alchemist what foods would help me resist poison. That was one of them. With that, victory was assured. The Nord was halfway through bottle number 7, but it's then that his monkey lips curled into a smile, because he was up to no good. I could already see the flies milling about in his head when he smashed the bottle on the table. Then, like a frenzied troll, the fiend swung the broken glass at my neck. I was about to demand his head for breaking the rules when I realized my mistake. I said our weapons would be wine bottles, but I failed to specify in what way. With idiots, you have to explain things without implications. I've sent him off on an important errand. Nothing more needs to be said.
Ooh.
Yes, sir, Professor Germain.
I'll be right back.
It's
It's a
war
shame
epic
that
about
there are
cold
only a
mercury
few of us in
that
all of
lasts
Nern capable of appreciating my work. Such is the tragedy of genius.
Yours is quite pretty. You should cherish it. A mortal has but one, although she wears many. Brave or bare, pale or plain, little is said, but in time all is written, in forests of grey or in barren canyons of earth. And when the night draws its curtains on twin suns, all that is left is nothing. All that was is hollow. Tell me, my lady, of what do I speak? Correct. You understand, then, that to wear many faces and to be without a face is the essence of life, and only in death do we return to the one. But that was then. Such limitations do not apply for those who turn the dead into the living. Perhaps you would like to volunteer that lovely face of yours for a makeover, before the worms decorate it with freckles? If you wish to hear my credentials first, then know that I am a disciple of the hollow-faced men of Nohotogra and the witches of Devil Rock. Yet I digress, for what you require first is a name. I am Yethrael, a sculptor of the dead. I am returning to Morrowind from a 50-year pilgrimage across the deserts of Valakir. I spent 40 years in the service of the Hollow Faces, learning the bending of bone and the dance of flesh. I spent another decade studying under the ancient covens of Devil Rock to study the art of bestial transformation. When I finished my training, it occurred to me that those who ply their trade in deceit could use my services, so I decided to return to Morrowind. Yet the Morrig tongue is no more, and the guilds are as brittle as the undead. A coven native to the coast, a league or two north of the Dragontail Mountains. In truth, I would have followed any coven, but after my time in the desert, I longed to see the ocean. Witchcraft naturally aligns with my interests. The ability to transform the body, to lengthen bones and expand the heart is an important skill. It is said the Glenmoral witches once took flight as ravens, and their spells could cure lycanthropy. There was still much I had wished to learn from the beldam of the coven, but such knowledge was only available to the most devoted of supplicants.
I wish I could join a coven. They tend to attack me on sight, though.
Yes, they are quite protective of their dens. I would suggest making allies with those who have ties to a sect. Skin changers, flesh dancers, the tribe of the wandering faces. The hollow-faced men of Nohotogra go by many names. Like the chirurgeons of Cloudrest and the slave sculptors of Iliad lore, they are masters of the art of molding flesh. Yes, as their existence is as much folklore as their abilities, I trekked to Hammerfell, unsure if my steps were made in vain. Must we prattle on about the particulars? I would much rather spend time in the arms of a young adventurer. But if you must know, they are assassins, priests. Like followers of Sithis, the Hollows walk the path of the living void. The lifeblood of their magic comes from their tribal gods, to whom they pay tribute at the shade temple strewn across the Alekir. They walk this long pilgrimage. The sandstorms cut away at their flesh, shaping their countenance, eroding flesh and bone. It is true in Hammerfell sand plays an important role in the shaping of all things. It is sand that allows the saw to cut and shape blocks of stone, sand that is glazed on the bone cutter's knife as he reshapes your skull. And that is the answer to your query. It is not flesh that makes a face. It is cartilage and bone. Shape that, and the flesh will form around it. For 7 days and 7 nights I marched across the dunes of Alikir. I collapsed on a nameless dune, surrendering to the heat and the vultures that loomed overhead. Yet, as the birds descended, their faces lost all expression, their eyes as hollow as midnight. As it turns out, they were not vultures, but men, nomads, crossing the desert. I pleaded for water first, and for directions second. The 3 nomads obliged, and led the way. I had no choice but to follow. The next morning I woke up and was startled to find myself surrounded by 3 new guides, each bearing no similarity to the last. I insisted no, demanded they tell me what had happened to the others. They said nothing, and once more bade me to follow. So it went as we traveled across the coastal kingdoms, through sandstorms and mountains and the snake pit of Balhar. Every night I bade my guides farewell, for every morning I knew another set would take their place. For almost a full season, finally the guides led me back to familiar sands, and we followed the stars to the nearest settlement. When we reached the oasis, I thanked the last of my guides, and was about to set off when I realized for the first time I recognized their faces. Sullen eyes, thin lips, and hooked noses. They looked almost like vultures. Then I knew. The guides had never changed. Only their faces. The guide saw my expression and nodded. I asked for his name, and if he would take me on as his disciple. "You may follow," he said, "but a name I cannot give, for to name a hollow-faced man is to walk the Alakir, and name the grains of sand." Isn't it obvious? How can I be a sculptor of the dead without dead people to sculpt? I appreciate your willingness to help. Yes, you may be able to assist me. I am not in need of a fresh corpse, but an old one. You see, upon entering Skyrim, my carriage was sacked by a group of bandits, and I was relieved of some personal effects. Foremost among them was a male hip bone widened to resemble a female's, crafted by a body sculptor. It is well known that the Aliads kept entire stables full of slaves, relying on their labor to build their shrines and monuments.
Yep.
Back then, slaves were valuable commodities. Stronger specimens, like yourself for instance, would be highly valued on the market. Of course, it is believed this led to underground operations, where the bodies of weaker slaves would be modified to appear robust. The High Elves have long been obsessed with their appearance, namely maintaining a similarity to their ancestral Aldmer. In time, the practice extended to other, more practical uses. Highborn often have their faces chiseled to maintain the appearance of youth. Thieves, criminals, and necromancers will pay a large sum to change their identity. The chirurgeons of Cloudrest accommodate them all. One of my former masters kept it as a souvenir, an oddity one puts on a desk to start a conversation. However, as a young apprentice bored with magic, it became the very catalyst for my life's pursuit. As my skill improved, I gravitated toward the more difficult arts, the more delicate flesh, none more so than the faces of the undead. Yet it all began with that single sculpted hip bone, one given to me as a parting gift when I left for Hammerfell. As the bandits unloaded my belongings, I overheard one of them discussing his future plans. Something about setting up camp overlooking a sleeping giant. His words only confused me, but perhaps you will be able to make sense of it. Excellent. I look forward to having my items returned to me. Some are dear to me for sentimental reasons. Others are vital for resuming my practice. And I assure you, if you do this for me, you will be handsomely rewarded.
Okay.
Safe travels.
Thanks.